How you doing, sir? I thank you for taking my call. I've been watching you for a couple of months now, and I saw one of your earlier episodes with you and the other brother that was speaking.
Torah.
And I noticed that you spoke about the red and blue blood.
Yes.
Now, I also watched a later episode of The Master Teacher, I believe, that was, no, actually, I'm actually enrolled in your online class.
Okay.
And one of the classes episodes spoke about there's a town in between Spain and France that 45% of its population is made up of RH negative blood.
Yes.
If you could you enlighten me on what did you mean by the red and blue blood? And I thank you for taking my call.
Absolutely. Right. So when you look at the people that are ruling the world on the planet, it's by blood. Everybody, emphasizes about blood because of the bloodlines. And so you can even Google all the presidents of America, for example, they're all related in some way, shape, or form, because going back to our ancient times, it was about preserving the bloodlines. And this is why even in the biblical stories, they tell you in the book of Numbers, for example, that this person begot this person and this person begot this person. And it's because they were keeping a tree, a family tree, and tracing the bloodlines. This is why we can actually tell you, because it's in the Bible, for example, the bloodline from Adam all the way to the book of Revelations in the New Testament. And so we know who these beings and extraterrestrials are. So when you look at as I also mentioned recently, that the political parties, they all tend to wear red ties and blue ties, or red and blue. You look at the American flag is red and blue. You look at the British flag is also got the red and blue, and this ties into the blood, because when you're looking at the Europeans, they were hemophiliacs because they were unable to clot. They lacked the hemoglobin. They didn't have the salt in their blood to clot. And it goes to something called the War of the Roses. If you research and Google the War of the Roses, where you had two families, the Lancasters and the Doncasters, I think. Basically, when you look at our history, it's always been about our blood. And this is a deep question, because when I say it's always been about our blood, when you look at slavery, a lot of that was because of our blood, because the Nubian or the Nagaru's blood is the blood that everybody wants or to mix in with, because it's the 9 ether blood, and all the genealogies on the planet come from the original DNA of the Africans on the planet. This has been proven by, archaeologists, anthropologists, all historians. So it's not even about, it's not a racism thing, but what it ties into is that when you look at that story that then relates to Dracula, because when you know about Dracula, Dracula is the being that he lives by sucking blood, or he feeds off of the blood. And so what Dracula does is he can't come out during the day because the sun will attack him. And that is symbolic of if you read the books in the Bible, of the book of Leviticus, it talks about the curse of Canaan, right? Who was the son of Ham. And because he had something called leproma, he was melanin deficient, and he had, he was something called an albino, or we say here albino. And so he couldn't live under the sun and had to move into cooler climates where it was more conducive for his lack of melanin. And so what Dracula does, he can't come out during the day, he has to come out at night or during the shadow hours, and then he has to pray and find a victim to bite and suck their blood. When you look at the word Dracula, it ties into the Draco or Draconians from the Draco star constellation, which is dealing with these beings that are, they love blood, they meat eat, they're human, they like human flesh. And so when you look at the Rh negative, that ties into those bloodlines, because that is an extraterrestrial blood type, the Rh negative. If you study blood types, you will find that the original Africans were originally, there were only positive blood types. The negative or the H factor came in because of these beings mixing with animals. And so it's a big story, but you've asked a very, very important question. So this is what we're talking about. Look, research the things I've said about Dracula, about the slave trade. This also ties into Abraham Lincoln and about the freedom of the slaves and so on and so forth. But research the War of Roses, research Dracula, and how it ties into the draconian and these beings that till this day are about blood and flesh, and it goes into Satanists, and it goes into a lot of rituals and a lot of practices that have weaved their way into religion. So now in the Bible, in the Quran and in these books, you start to see like they're sprinkling blood over the altar, they're doing blood sacrifices, and they're offering sacrifices of even being tested to try and get killed or sacrifice your son, and in the sense of Isaac and those types of things. So there's a lot to it. We have a lot of books that do go into it. There's one called Bloodthirst. I think I just had it. Bloodthirst, and let me give you the proper title. I know today we're going to have a lot of questions. I can just feel it.
You've got 2 donations, yeah.
Okay. I literally just had it. But that ties into these beings called Anunnaki, which a lot of people seem to be on, per Anunnaki and the biblical Quranic race. That will give you information about what we were just speaking about. But there's a particular scroll that I'm going to find.